Welcome to the Next Patient podcast, where we are exploring opportunities facing today's leaders in the health and wellness industry. I'm your host, Mariani Alza, and today I'm joined by Cheryl Albright from Soul to Soul Yoga. Cheryl, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
And thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Cheryl, let's start with how you first entered the health and wellness space. What kind of drew you in, and how did your experience as an occupational therapist lead you to create Soul to Soul Yoga?
So I have an older brother on the profound end of the autism spectrum. And so when I was looking for colleges and what I was going to do with my life, I looked for universities that had occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy because I didn't know which one I wanted to do. So the universities had to have all three. Um, Long story short, the occupational therapy track was the shortest. It was the last one to still be at the bachelor's level. So that's why I chose that one. Um,
Well,
Not
as
gonna
we
lie
do.
about that. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is shorter and cheaper. Okay, great. Um, and so then after that, I had worked for a couple years and was like, okay, now what? And at that point, I was at a school for children with disabilities, and they went there because their home district could not educate them for either behavioral or complicated medical needs. Like I think we had like 5 or 6 nurses on staff, which is unheard of at a school. So it's going okay. Well, now what? And then I'm going to date myself. So that is at a point in time where advance for occupational therapy practitioners had a circular that went out. They had it for all the allied health professionals, and in the back had continuing education opportunities for courses that you could take. And so I thought a week in Sarasota, Florida sounded like a good time, and picked yoga for the special child that is now yoga for all abilities, um, and did not know what I was getting myself into. I knew nothing about yoga. I just thought a week in Florida sounded fantastic. And the way they had the day broken up felt kind of like a wellness retreat. And so I was like, okay, well, this like two birds, one stone, and it's a tax write-off. Beautiful. After about a week of training, I realized that my physical body was changing and I didn't really understand why. And so I went back to the school I worked for. I was there for maybe a couple years after that training. Did yoga classes, both group and individual, with children with disabilities, and thought, okay, I'm seeing progress. Now what? And so then I did traveling therapy, like traveling nursing. So you take contracts all over the United States. So I worked and tried this method on other people's dimes to see if I was getting the same results. It wasn't just like an isolated thing at the school, and kept seeing results. And started originally, the business started in New York. I had a partner at the time. We kind of went our separate ways. I moved to Florida for a while. Business will be celebrating 10 years in January. So I'm not sure when this podcast is coming out, but in January it'll be 10 years. And our second location is in the Asheville, North Carolina area.
That's awesome. Congratulations on the 10 years. It's a
Thank
good amount of time
you.
to get that experience and see how the industry and trends have progressed. So that's amazing. Um, so obviously in doing this, you've identified a need, right? So you've built Soul to Soul Yoga with a strong therapeutic and inclusive mission. What gaps did you see in both traditional yoga spaces and those therapy settings, particularly for people of all abilities, that made you feel compelled to really launch your own studio?
I think I just found a way that made sense. I think is it was a an OT school. They give us like frameworks. You have different lenses, is how I like to look at it, that you look through. And this was just another lens in my toolbox. And what I found was that once the connection was built, progress was made quicker, and it felt more of a bottom up approach, meaning, we get the nervous system under control, their sensory processing improves, their motor planning improves, and then eventually we get to executive functioning. Is kind of the hierarchy that I look at things. And so it just made sense. And anecdotal information that I would give, even today is, my child's sleeping better, or the child would say, I actually slept last night, or, my digestion feels better, whatever the ailment was. What I liked is it wasn't diagnostic specific. So it wasn't like it's not like a protocol. I mean, yoga has 8 different limbs to it, and you can pick one to kind of meet them where they're at and then kind of go from there. And so I felt that it was before my time. I've spent most of my time in the Bible Belt, which is taboo still to some people, but I've still managed to make it work.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, definitely tell you I haven't heard that one in a minute, but that's
Mhm.
great. And obviously, one of the powerful things about soul to soul yoga is how you actually support your individuals across their lifespan. So, having from children with special needs to adults with neurological or physical challenges, how do you foster such a deeply engaged, trusting community? And what strategies have helped you maintain those client retention over the years?
That's a good question. I try to serve as many people as possible. And so, one of those things I had to get in my head is you can't serve people living out of your car. So, a lot of people in the health and wellness space just want to help everybody. And so, one way that I could do that is take Medicaid. And so that gave access to people who normally probably wouldn't have chose this approach, probably wouldn't even have thought that that was an option. We have to take Medicare in Florida, and so that's l- a little bit on hiatus at the moment because nobody's getting reimbursed with government shutdown. So, um, but it was one way to get people in the door, right? The retention was easy once they got there. It was getting them in the door and looking past the word yoga. And even when billing insurance, we bill under a DBA of all ages therapy services because Medicare didn't like the word yoga, although they still write the checks to it. We'll play the game, right? Like it was just like, okay, whatever you say. Um, and so people hear the word yoga and there's usually an immediate reaction. Like I did my little community had a vendor table, yes, like had a vendor event. Most people were like selling Christmas crafts and stuff like that, but I thought, yeah, why not? And they either saw the word yoga and they run,
Mhm.
or they're like, wait, what is it that you're doing here? And once you get them engaged in the conversation, so yeah, even though our local center here was like, how many do you need for a class? We all could use it. And then the other ones would just run. And so I've
Yeah,
learned, not to take offense to that. It's just like, those aren't your people. And okay, move on.
yeah,
And as far as
absolutely.
retention goes, I mean, once they start feeling better, it's just kind of a no brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. And they get to feeling better, and then they are able to hit that age where then they're able to use the Medicaid, which enables them to continue using your service.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. And you, of course, you emphasize individualized care and healing. Can you share some more of those memorable successes in keeping your clients deeply satisfied? And maybe also some of the more difficult lessons you've had to navigate in achieving that level of care?
We had a parent, when you have a child with a disability, like they over the top celebrate milestones that maybe get hit, right? And I had a parent that said at I think it was 8 or 9 years old, was able to actually blow out their own birthday candles. And she never realized the dysfunction that was in the breathing patterns that were there until we're like, oh, this is where we're going to start. And once you can do that, you can regulate the nervous system and all sorts of things can happen. And so she was just over the moon. And unless you have an individual with a disability in your family, you don't really understand the meaning behind that, right? And so it took that long for that child to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And so that was fun. I do some work in behavioral health as well. And I had a guy come up to me. He was there longer than he probably should have been, but that happens sometimes, an inpatient. And he's like, your crazy shit works. And I was like, okay, tell me more. I was like, I did the stuff before bed and sleeping and slept all night. I slept a full 8 hours, and he hadn't done that since his manic episode had begun. So I was like, okay, so and that's in behavioral health, that's probably the most, that's what I'm told the most is like I actually could get some sleep. Is probably the number one report. There's a few other anecdotal things, but that's when it's acute crisis stabilization, they're not there long. So you hopefully get in and give them something, right? Like hopefully they take something with them. Uh, so out of that, people were asking, well, where do I find you? And I was like, well, I'm kind of the mastermind behind the scenes now. Like I don't really do a whole lot of the therapy anymore. So I created some free videos on my website. So I was like, if you can access internet, you can have at it. And it was really out of them asking. But so now they're just there. So I can meet people at any price point, at any level, at any, um, and that makes me feel good about that. That if they have to put forth the effort to access it, which sometimes is a challenge, but they're out there for everybody. It doesn't have to be a person with a disability. It could just be you are, recovering from a minor surgery and need a chair practice while you heal, or a laying down. There's one that's laying down chair and then kind of a more typical, kind of up and down kind of class. But um, yeah, it was just, I hear all sorts of crazy things over the years, but those are the two that stick out in my brain most of the time.
I love that. I love that. So someone coming up to me and being like, "Hey, I didn't think so, but this actually works." I'm like,
Yeah,
you actually did something with this."
right.
And what kind of, obviously you touched on in your last point as well, how some people do run away at the word of yoga. Um, is that something that you've kind of been able to overcome of being like, hey, no, like I can tell you something that's going to make yoga seem less scary and they're able to give it a shot? Or are you more like, you know what, if you don't believe in yoga, I'm not going to spend the time trying to convince you of it. You're just more so looking for people that are interested in yoga in the first place.
Probably a combination of the two. I mean, I can tell by how they approach it if they're open to having a conversation or not, right? And you learn pretty quick. Um, I probably should change some of my marketing materials to the pain points other than the people that we work with, which is, something for next year. But they don't, I think there's a especially especially in certain religious sectors, there's a misconception of what yoga actually is. And there's an assumption that it's a religion. And if they're coming in with that kind of energy, I don't even try it. There was one time my husband was manning my table. I had like walked away or something, and this guy just like went off on him and was like, "I don't need my soul saved," and just completely. So the world is an interesting. No, the world is fine. The country is an interesting place right now, and um, you get you get a mix. It's kind of funny though, because some people there I think I was before the times, right? So we're going on year 10. And so 10 years ago, I would say there's definitely been a shift. Yoga is more mainstream. It's now in schools, it's in, behavioral health hospitals, it's in different places. So I feel like there's more exposure, and then, social media and everything else that goes with that.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So you're kind of letting the trend take its kind of realm and let people fight
Mhm.
that battle instead of you trying to fight it yourself, which I
Right.
totally support. That's a very, very fair approach to go about it. So then talking about kind of challenges and maybe some drop-offs. Even in an admission-driven environment, I'm sure not every single student or client continues through a full course of therapy plan. So from your observations, what holds some people back from completing your programs, and how do you actually work to address those barriers?
There's a mix. I mean, if it's insurance based and insurance says I'm not paying, for this anymore, and people have to pay out of pocket, some people just can't do it. So there's definitely, um, especially in the last couple of years, definitely people are a little more strapped for cash, right? And so they just can't do the individual stuff. Um, at one point I did have like a brick and mortar and had, well, then, we have these group classes that are significantly cheaper and we offer packages. And if you're on Social Security, I would cut it in half. And like I would try to work with people so that the financial burden is probably the biggest one. If, we were taking this one carrier for a while and they just stopped paying.
Mm,
And the parents are like, I can't afford this. So there's that. Medicare has caps. So in the senior community, Medicare is not unlimited. So it's not like you can just go on forever with that. So there's, you know, I like to get really to the nitty gritty, and then you have to go do this at home. So you don't have to keep coming back and seeing me. And so there's that. Um, there's people move away, people don't like telehealth, people don't, there's any number of reasons
Yeah.
why. Um, we found, I mean, but then again, we'll try to find money. Like we had a grant through United Way for some hurricane relief, and they've discovered, people's mental health was suffering from either emotional from yet another natural disaster, or they physically or lost property and, had to relocate or things like that. And so, when we have opportunities like that, we tend to jump on them. I just wrote a 71 page grant for the state of North Carolina. Hopefully we'll be able to get that. And it's really addressing underserved communities. And so, with that pulls me out of doing service delivery if I'm sitting down and doing those bigger projects too. So, people, some people get stuck on their therapist and they don't want to work with another one of my therapists, or they don't, so that's another. I've been really lucky with staff retention. Um, and I think because of what I do, I'm like, you will not see this, like this is your cap of how many clients you will see in a week. Um, because it's too much. You need to have a life.
Right.
And so, sometimes people fall off because we don't have the staff. Right now our wait list is relatively short, but it's starting to, as people get into the holidays, people are getting stressed out. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And hmm, that's fair because I feel like, I mean, first of all, staff retention is super, super important. So that's able to kind of facilitate that patient retention as well. But you mentioned that you're doing group courses as well, right? Group therapy
Mhm.
sessions. How has that been working out for you, and specifically kind of on the patient side of it, what's the feedback that you've gotten on that?
So online ones haven't really, I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't built that side of the model either. Like I have the ability to do it. I
Yeah.
just not one of those things that, um, because people are like, well, I can find it free on YouTube, right? And so like I just haven't built out that kind of business model for that particular side of thing. Um, Therapy group classes in person, what I've done is just it's going to be a contract model. So, like, you are asking us to come in and serve your population versus trying to find the population and then serve them. So,
Right.
more B2B instead of B2C, right? And so that is better. Like, they either say, we usually get these after the new year, we want 6 weeks worth of classes for our individuals, whatever it's, if it's an employer, whatever is coming in for, to de-stress after the holidays kind of thing. The Center for Independent Living had us coming in for a series of classes. I think that was grant funded. Um, so, it just depends. If it's, I will say, I find it harder because I'm a therapist and not, um, is like a traditional studio owner. So I don't have like that membership model. I don't have a good grasp on as far as like that and keeping people engaged for the group stuff. But going into places has worked much better for us.
Right. I like that. I like that a
Mm.
lot. Yeah, because obviously we've had people before come on and say that a very essential part of therapy is being that one-on-one FaceTime value, right? Instead of being in the group session. So that's why I was curious. I was like, well, sometimes and maybe in different sections of the industry, maybe group therapy would actually be a better route. But yeah, so I'm interested in seeing if you ever do end up developing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It depends, right? It's like if people are looking for community and that group support, which I mean, I do. I'm a what they call a sib. So having the older brother with a disability, you get a bunch of sibs in a room and we don't shut up. Like that's just what happens because you finally have somebody in front of you who understands how you grew up and no story is too crazy and the crap that we've all gone through and all of the things like there is value to that. I mean, socialization is a social determinant of health. The Health Organization has put that out there. So there is a place for that,
Mhm.
for sure. I don't think it all needs to be a one-on-one. So if it's somebody who is socially isolating and needs community, then I would say one-on-one is probably not the most therapeutic for them. If and sometimes maybe it's a combination of the two, or maybe the one-on-one is done with a mental health therapist and we address something else and working in those interdisciplinary teams just so that they get the right service and the things that they need.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely like that a lot. And I'll be, yeah, I'll still be very interested in knowing if you develop that and how that kind of works out for you. So then, okay,
Maybe.
looking ahead in terms of trends and future adaptations, what trends are you currently seeing in yoga therapy, whether inclusion or integrative wellness, that you think soul to soul yoga needs to lean into just a bit more?
I think, you know, diversifying revenue streams is what I'm looking at for next year. So I've had these like little projects that were kind of like separate and it was kind of this is over here and this is over here and they really don't need to be. They just need to be under the same umbrella. So um the passion project like the blog and the sibling support, there's no reason why that just can't be part of an overall family wellness stuff, right? And so taking that, I have no idea how to monetize a blog. I'll figure it out though. There's YouTube videos for that. Like I have no problem or I'll pay for a course. Like I'll figure it out. Not a big deal. Another DBA that's going to be coming under our wing is yoga for scleroderma, which is a very specific diagnostic training, and nobody knows what scleroderma is. So having that under, it's for yoga teachers primarily, and also people that have scleroderma that have some kind of yoga background, whether it's training or like myself as a therapist and happens to get this diagnosis. And so we will be working on how all of these different things can still live under Soul to Soul umbrella, and how each of them having different revenue streams. So not everything is dependent on service delivery. It could be courses, it could be, it could be different things to then help keep the wheels turning because Medicaid could fall off at any point.
Mhm.
So it's like, how do we got to keep going. So I want to keep my people employed and happy. So trying to figure out different ways, expanding the education and training piece is definitely regardless of what falls under what category, but that to be a bigger piece for next year.
Yeah, of course, of course. And then Cheryl, tell me about, we kind of touched on a little bit of like your proudest milestones, but obviously you're doing so much meaningful work, so I hope that there's multiple of those milestones coming in. But so far in your past 10 years, what would you say has been your biggest milestone for Soul to Soul Yoga, or defining success since you founded it in the first place?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I think just having some alternative in the wellness space has been, especially in parts of Florida where that I'm trying to leave politics out of it. Very not well received. I think that we've done a good job um, with that. I also think we did a good job with systems and processes and trying to get people in and getting therapy quicker than a lot of places and leaning on technology. I've definitely been leaning on AI for proposals to go speak places to then hopefully get um, some more paid speaking opportunities, those kind of things. And so things have just evolved and we've done okay. And I think that is the biggest accomplishment. People are like, wow, 10 years. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like, It was just supposed to be this little side hustle I did over here, and that's not at all what it is. Um, so yeah,
Now we're here seeing
starting,
it.
yeah, now I'm presenting at the World Federation of OT on what I'm doing. So like it's just weird. That's a big deal. That was a big milestone when they sent that email. So I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I hope it was spectacular. And you just mentioned AI innovations. Is that part of like, are you having a new innovative strategy come on into your business?
Yeah. I mean, EMR systems have definitely gotten better over the years as far as like, prices are going down because there's more to choose from and there's, those kind of things. So as far as like that kind of innovation, yeah, I mean, technology's gotten better. Our systems and processes have gotten better. I do have standard operating procedures, which I didn't have years ago.
In terms of scaling for your practice, I know we touched on how you have now two locations, um, and overall it hasn't stayed small. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you grew from a mobile practice at first, right? And now you're in a full center?
We started as just me, myself, and I in a home-based kind of model. 2019, I think I got my first office. We had a brick and mortar until it was 2024. So we had a couple different locations in there. The thing that I noticed is that people kept asking for services outside the center. Like, so people were like, hey, if we contract you for this, can you come here? Or I'd rather have the services at home, one less thing I have to go do. And so I kept getting pulled out of it. I'm like, why do I have this overhead? Like, this is stupid. So I sold it and we went back to the original home-based model. And so I mean, volume didn't change, just
Yeah.
the expenses, just the
Yeah.
expenses changed. So, um, yeah, I don't see us going back to brick and mortar, at least not anytime soon. I don't know if I even really see the need. Um, yeah, I don't know if I'll do that again. It's just it's a different mod it's a different model than therapy, right? So I was trying to run two different businesses at the same time. So I had the therapy side where we were doing individual sessions and we had two different rooms so two different people could be seen at the same time and all of that stuff. And then I was trying to run yoga classes, which is a membership based model, which is different than the one-on-one. And so I never got a good grasp. And I always try to like, be ahead of the curve and was doing more of not pay per class, but percentage so that the yoga teacher had some kind of skin in the game to go out and network and nobody wanted to go do it. And I was like, I'm only one person. I do not have a marketing team. Marketing is me. So I mean, I shouldn't say that. I do contract out my social media marketing, but um she's just quicker in Canva than my brain could ever process that. So, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, I suppose. I just could not get my head around the membership versus, the therapy side.
Absolutely. And so as you expand or as you continue to expand and kind of deepen your work, now what do you think are going to be the next set of new challenges that you see in your upcoming horizon?
Like, how do you get those speaking opportunities, right? And so the beginning of this year, a therapist colleague of mine was going to be out of town. She was like, do you mind, the school is looking for place to present. So I flew to New York and did that. And it was like, okay, so how do I get more of that? And who do I need to get in front of? And so going, I'll be the World Federation of OT is in Thailand. So I reached out to studios that I knew that were in Asia that I had met for travels or good colleagues. The problem is it's right around the Chinese New Year. So I'm running into some cultural bumps in the road, but we hopefully we'll have Hong Kong solidified by the end of this month. So it's like, who else can I, like, what else can I do? Oh, I'm already going to be on that side of the world. So expenses for them are lower because they don't need to fly me from the US, right? I'm already in Thailand. That's a
Right.
quick little flight in the
Right.
scheme of the world, right? And so, how do I get those kind of opportunities? Because I like to travel too. So like it doesn't have to be. It could be online, it could be wherever, but those bigger one ticket items versus a lot of like little things. Um I've thought about I used to before COVID, I used to do something called two CUs and a beer. And so we could take over a brewery and you could come in and hang out and you get continuing ed credit. You get two CUs and a beer. Like it's advertised, pretty simple. Like no, no muss, no fuss. And people would, what I found is that other OTs would start networking afterwards. And then if I didn't have to give you credit towards your license or you just wanted to come, it was at a much lower, it just covered the cost of the beer basically. And so people actually would come to these things and like network. And I was like, huh. I got an employee at one point. Unfortunately, she moved away. She's amazing, but she moved away. And that you never know what you're gonna get out of those. So I was like, maybe we need to bring those back. I live at the land, you throw a dart, there's a brewery somewhere. So um in the wellness space, that might be a little taboo, especially with like behavioral health, but it gets the whole point. It doesn't have to be. It could be a cup of coffee. It could be at a coffee shop too. We can have some sober events as well. It was just, I remember doing those. I remember they were fun. How do we, maybe do some of those things again so that, it gets people in the door. So whether it's services or if I'm my next employee or I more course content, and eventually not be the one presenting, but having other presenters come in. So, and that's essentially running events, which I know nothing about. So,
I love
but I'll
all of
figure it
it.
out.
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
figure it
I
out.
love that mindset. Two CUs and a beer. I like that a lot. Or a coffee. I like that a lot.
Right.
Last question for you, Cheryl. What advice would you give to other founders and owners in the health and wellness industry?
So yeah, just try it. It doesn't work. Try something out. I mean, if you don't, you fail more times than you actually succeed. If you look at any athlete, they don't make all their shots, right? So why are we so afraid? I mean, I get it. Like if there's money on the line and that's how you're feeding your family and all of those kind of things. Sure, obviously I didn't spend an exorbitant amount of money on stuff, right? But it was enough to go, oh, that didn't work. Okay, on to the next. And what are those things that you're good at? Like I like to present and I like to speak and I'm decent at service delivery, I think, I hope. At this point, after 20, almost 23 years of being an OT. Um, but like what are those and then hire out the rest. Like I wish I would have had a virtual assistant sooner. That I mean, that that's probably the biggest thing. Like having because like there's stuff I don't have to worry about. Like end of the month billing, I don't do it anymore.
Yeah,
The only thing I
absolutely.
get a report and I do payroll. And even then, he could probably do that at this point. I could probably stop that. It was just more of a like, control the funds. But you know, I would say, yeah. And then like social media, it would take me hours to come up with content that was going nowhere. Like,
Yeah. Your
like
time is
why?
valuable. Your time
Why
is
am
very
I
valuable.
playing on Canva for hours and it takes this woman like 10 minutes to put this stuff together? Like I don't know. Like and so being hiring stuff out and like if you can do it, pay yourself a little less because it'll come back. I mean, it's to help support what's going on, right? And so yeah, that's get a virtual assistant. They're amazing.
Cheryl, thank you so much. A huge thank you to you for sharing such valuable insights. If you'd like to learn more about Soul to Soul Yoga, head over to their website or connect with them on their socials. That will be linked below. And we'll see you on the next episode of Next Patient.